astrology. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for coming to another video. I hope you're all doing well, staying healthy, staying safe. Today I'm coming at you with my favorite book recommendations, and I've been really excited to make this video. I'm a big reader. I've been a big reader my whole life, but then during high school and the first part of college when my depression was at its worst, I kind of lost interest in reading. And actually what brought me back into reading are some of the books here. I started reading nonfiction voraciously and absolutely loved it. And so today I wanted to share some of my favorite spirituality books. If it's your first time here, hi, my name is Abigail. I'm an astrologer and a yogi and a general student of life. And on this channel, I like to make videos about astrology, tarot, veganism, and general spirituality. If you don't already have a drink, go ahead and grab one and settle in. I just have some peppermint tea today because it's that time of year. Okay, so I have 4 different subsections of books. And this first section is the classics, like old-timey spirituality books. The first one is the Bhagavad Gita. I read this for my yoga teacher training back in March of this year and loved it. It's bookmarked up. Sorry, it's a loud time of night in the city apparently. I really love this book. Basically, this book follows Prince Arjuna. He is fighting, I believe, his brother or his cousin in a battle. And the Bhagavad Gita is kind of like a subsection, like a single chapter, I believe, of an epic play in the Hindu tradition. Think like the Iliad or the Odyssey, but from India instead. And so this book is Arjuna talking to Krishna, who I believe is the avatar of the top god or all of the gods or whatever. And it's basically a conversation. It's kind of the Socratic method of Arjuna asks the question of I don't want to fight, I don't want to do this, and Krishna saying it's your duty. And basically through their conversation, this book lays down the foundation of yoga. Basically this is where yoga comes from. So I'm not going to share a passage from every single book because we would be here all day, but just to kind of give you an example of how yoga comes from this book. At one point Krishna says, "Actions do not cling to me because I am not attached to their results. Those who understand this and practice it live in freedom." And I don't know if you can see, but I've highlighted this book a bunch, and I really want to reread this because there are so many deep themes in it, and you could analyze it and study it very intensely. And at the same time, there are passages like the one I just read where you read it and it's that applies to my life today. Okay, yeah, so this book is at least 3,000 years old, and it's just so cool that there are parts of this book that resonate with, us today. It's maybe not the most accessible book, but if you're interested in learning about yoga and its traditions, I think that this is an essential read. It's interesting, and there are a lot of translations that offer, support and commentary and all of that you can read. I don't think that's a super complicated book, but at the same time, if you don't know what to look for, you might get bored or lost. But yeah, so I've talked a lot about it. This is the first one. I highly recommend this one. And then the second book is Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Similar to Bhagavad Gita, this one is pretty old. It's a little less than 2,000 years old. And when I read this, I didn't resonate with all of it. And a lot of the ideas presented here are not new to me because I've studied Buddhism to some extent. Sorry, my cat is attacking her favorite box right now, so if you hear cardboard being shredded, that's her. But yeah, so in this, I didn't find a lot of new information, and some of it was very much, from the mindset of an emperor, a Roman emperor, being a man in that time. And so I didn't necessarily resonate with everything in here, but every now and then I would read something and it's oh yeah, it still applies to life today. Again, kind of interesting how these themes and lessons were written thousands of years ago and are still relevant to us today. Oh, also, I love the format of this book because there are 12 books in it and each one is about 10 pages. So this is one you can easily pick up and read for a little bit and then come back to later, and you don't need to read it all at once to get the full picture. But this passage says, Perfection of character requires this, that you should live each day as though it were your last, and be neither agitated, nor lethargic, nor act apart. And this passage really reminds me of in yoga, when they say non-attachment and non-aversion, but also not being indifferent. It's slightly different languages and a slightly different idea, but it's really just don't live in extremes and live authentically and be interested in the life around you. I should probably give ratings. This is a 5 out of 5. I think I gave this one a 3 out of 5 on Goodreads, just because 30% of it is really, really good. 50% of it is okay. And the other 20%, like, I kind of skimmed a little bit. So 3 out of 5, because a good portion of it is pretty good and there's lessons to be learned here. All right, and then my third and final book in this kind of classics series is the Tao Te Ching, and this book is so good. Similar to Meditations, it's kind of in short verse format. I mean, actually, like, the messages in this book, there are 81 of them, and they're poems. And I love this translation in particular because there are multiple scholars and like high up Taoists who are giving their opinions on it. And so it's not just like reading poetry and not really understanding it. It's reading the poetry and then getting multiple interpretations of it, and different scholars pick out different things to focus on. So this is really good. It's a really foundational text for Taoism. Basically the point is action through non-action, go within, live in harmony, etc. One that I really love, I'm not going to read it because it's a slightly longer poem, but George Harrison was inspired by this and wrote a song on it, so obviously I love it. But I just love it. It's like the further one goes, the less one knows. The Taoist knows without going, understands without seeing, accomplishes without action. This one is good, they're all good. But basically it's like a poem and then like 4 pages of analysis. So this is another one that's really nice to kind of pick up and put down, and you can return to anytime and start anywhere without needing to like know what came before. So this one is a 5 out of 5. I think this is really beautiful and there's a lot of wisdom in this. Okay, yeah, so these are the classics. These 3 are like the old but good and still worth reading. Okay, next I'm gonna go with 3 of my favorite contemporary general spirituality. So I have a lot of opinions on the power of now. I don't love Eckhart Tolle or Tolle or however you say his name. I kind of, yeah, I didn't like that book very much to begin with. And then when he started talking about how women should experience their periods, his language, not mine. He lives in this very like male-centered, like male viewpoint of heteronormativity and gender roles and all of this. And he had this whole section about how women are closer to being present in the moment because they experience their periods, and if they have trouble being present while menstruating, they should ask their partner, boyfriend or husband, because again, heteronormativity, to help them through their menstrual period. And I just laughed at that point because like this cis white man is gendering periods, saying that only women get their periods, and trying to tell them how to experience them. So I don't love the power of now, quite honestly. I think that it's a lot of the same thing being said again and again. However, I do love practicing the power of now. So if you haven't read either of these books and you're at the bookstore and you see Eckhart Tolle or Tolle or whatever, and you're like, what do I get? I would highly recommend getting Practicing the Power of Now. It's more condensed and it actually explains how to put these practices into your life. And I gained wisdom from this book. I read this one before The Power of Now. I don't know, as I'm talking about this more, I feel like I'm like talking myself out of why I liked this book. I think that Eckhart Tolle has some wisdom to share. I think that it's his interpretation of classic texts. There's a lot of like Buddhist and mindfulness theory thoughts in here. It's not my favorite book, but if you are completely new to spirituality and you've heard the name Eckhart Tolle or Eckhart Tolle and you want to get a book by him, I would recommend this one over The Power of Now. I have A New Earth on my bookshelf and I haven't read it yet, so I can't say anything about that. But yeah, this one, 3 out of 5. There's some good stuff, but like nothing new or revolutionary. Okay, that got a little negative. Next, I have Alan Watts' The Wisdom of Insecurity. And this is also kind of a 3 out of 5. It's one of those ones where you read it and it's like, there's nothing new in here. However, there were some really good pieces of wisdom, and like, I don't know how well the camera will pick this up. I have dog-eared it a little bit. You know, there's a lot about like the wisdom that the body holds and being present, being aware, limiting distractions. And this book, I don't know, Alan Watts was the 1950s, right? Yeah, 1951 was when this book was written. And I think that it's interesting how it's perhaps even more poignant now with the technology and distractions that we have today, even more so than it was in the 1950s. But yeah, it's a 3 out of 5. It's a pretty quick and easy read. And I think, like, I made my list of books like a week ago, and now I'm looking back and I'm like, why did I pick these? But these, I think, are really nice if you don't want to read the classics, or you just kind of want to dip your toe into spirituality. I think that these are very accessible for people who don't know anything about being mindful, being present, etc. And these kind of give you a quick, like, you know, you can kind of like dip your toe in and get a little bit of a sense for what it is. And then if you like these, and you can go back to like the original text and see where they got their wisdom from. So far my general spirituality section is not as great as I thought, but this book is amazing. Spiritual bypassing, when spirituality disconnects us from what really matters. This book is so good. I have always felt this way and had these thoughts about spiritual bypassing, recognizing it in others and in myself, but I didn't have the words like to describe it, you know? But basically people who are spiritual bypassing are the people who are kind of like, all love and light, I don't want to live in the matrix, I just want to like ascend, you know? People who like view negative emotions as being bad and things that you need to work around. And this book talks about how spirituality and humanity are really one and the same, and you can't separate them. You can't like pretend that you're not a human, that you don't live on Earth. You do have to function as a human being in a society. And so this book offers some really good wisdom on how to approach spirituality in a way that's actually grounded and beneficial, because there are some sides of spirituality that are not as glamorous and love and light. It's not just like crystals and incense and, you know, yoga. And in this book he really talks about like psychology and psychotherapy is actually part of spirituality. Like doing shadow work is part of spirituality. And in order to be a spiritual person, you have to deal with your emotional stuff and like psychological stuff, and the path is not around that to spirituality. The path is through that, and going through that and diving deep within yourself and unpacking traumas and thought patterns and behavior patterns and etc. That is spirituality, and that will lead you to true spiritual enlightenment. Pretending that you don't have problems isn't spiritual, it's spiritual bypassing. So I really love this book. This was a 5 out of 5, and I highly recommend this to anyone who kind of gets into spirituality and thinks that like it's gonna cure everything. It's not. Astrology is cool, tarot is cool, but those aren't gonna fix your problems. They can help you, they can be a tool, but ultimately there's other work that needs to get done. And this book offers a lot of wisdom and insight on that. So yeah, my general spirituality, oh, they're all blue. It's not quite as strong as I thought it was gonna be. These two are really good if you don't know anything about Eastern philosophy or mindfulness or anything like that. This is a good kind of way to dip your toe in. And then this is really, really good if you're kind of on your spiritual journey. Actually, I just think that everyone who thinks that they're spiritual should read this book. The next section is yoga and meditation books, and there are a lot that I could bring up here, but I really wanted to focus on these two because I think that these two are the most accessible. And honestly, like half the reason I wanted to make this video was for this book. Anytime anyone asks me about meditation, or they'll post on their social media like, I want to get into meditation, but I have tinnitus. When I sit down, I get distracted. How do I do this? This book is literally everything, but it goes over everything from like why you should meditate, how to get into a comfortable seat, mental things that are gonna come up, like everything from distractions to like deep-seated trauma that you didn't know that you had, like everything that comes up during a meditation. So yeah, it has Nigel Wellings, thoughts. And then it has insight from people who like claim that they couldn't meditate and have since learned how to do so. And then again, it tackles everything from sitting up properly so that you meditate best, distractions that are going to come up. This one chapter I love is called Grabby, Grumpy, Sleepy, Jumpy, and Maybe. And it's like, those are the things that are going to pull your attention away from the present moment and how to deal with those. And then of course he goes through, and the last chapter is called It's Not All Pain, because like this book really tackles a lot of the stuff that's not talked about with meditation. It's very practical and realistic. I think a lot of books on meditation are very much like decalcify your pineal gland and like transcend and like get above, and kind of in a spiritual bypassing way of like avoid your thoughts, ignore your thoughts, and like get into this like 5D consciousness. But this book is really like, here are the reasons you should meditate, here are the benefits of it, and here are the things that are gonna come up. This book is just full of little practical tips that are it's so seemingly straightforward and easy to apply to your own meditation practice. But yeah, I recommend this for people who have never meditated before and want to get into it, for people who are seasoned meditators, for people who used to meditate but don't anymore or whatever. This book is so good. I literally cannot stress enough how amazing this book is. Next is more of a yoga book, The Inner Tradition of Yoga, A Guide to Yoga Philosophy for the Contemporary Practitioner. This is good. I read this before I really got into yoga. You know, a lot of things covered in here are also covered in the Bhagavad Gita or the Yoga Sutras. Like, the information in here, it's nothing new, it's nothing revolutionary, but similar to this book, it's presented in a way that's very practical and applicable, and you read it and you're like, that makes sense. I can apply that to my own life, day to day. I can apply it to my yoga practice when I'm on the mat and when I'm off the mat. This is another one that I really highlighted up and like, so this one talks about everything from like the 8-limb path of yoga to letting go to prana, like the energy that flows. This is such a good book. Highly, highly recommend. Anyone I know who is getting into yoga in any shape or form, I recommend this one. So for my yoga and philosophy section, both these books are a 5 out of 5. So applicable, so practical, and like you read them and you want to meditate and you want to do yoga because it seems so easy. Not easy, realistic is the right word. So these are fantastic. My final section is general life advice. These are not spiritual books, but like I talked about with spiritual bypassing, you can't just replace all your life problems with a spiritual practice. You are still human, you still have to function on earth, and these books help make it a little bit easier. So the first one, like the previous two I mentioned, this one is just so practical and realistic and applicable, and I think I've used those 3 adjectives a million times already. This book is so good, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Basically, this takes the book The Power of Habit, which I have not read, but maybe it's on my bookshelf. I might have donated it. But this basically takes the concepts from The Power of Habit and puts it into a work plan of here's how to break a bad habit and here's how to start a good habit. Basically, the thesis is to create a good habit, you make it obvious, you make it attractive, you make it easy, and you make it satisfying. To break a bad habit, you make it invisible, make it unattractive, make it difficult, and make it unsatisfying. It's as simple as that. And then on top of that, explaining that and whatever, this book goes deep into it. It's like, okay, how do you make a habit easy? How do you make it easy to do something? How do you make it attractive? I think he even says in here that like every habit that you do that's a good habit is a vote for yourself, and every bad habit is a vote against yourself. And as you go through life, you want to have as many votes for yourself as possible. I really loved this book. I thought it just makes sense. You know, I'm a Virgo rising. I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart. I love habits. I love planning. I love habit trackers, etc. And this is basically like how to actually make habits stick and not just, you know, kind of have it as a lofty goal in your head. So 5 out of 5. The next one, I discovered through yoga actually. When I was in my yoga teacher training, someone was talking about this book and like someone else was like, oh yeah, this is such a great book. It's called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's basically about how our body stores trauma. There are so many forms of trauma that all of us carry that we might not even know about. That's physical trauma, there's emotional trauma, mental, relational, etc. And this book is really fantastic. It talks about like what trauma is, how we like learned about it, and then it talks about kind of how your mind changes from trauma. And as someone who was a psychology major for 2 years, that section was so cool. This book is so deeply fascinating in a psychological way, but it's not so technical or scientific that a layperson couldn't read it. And obviously I'm a layperson too. I'm like not studying psychology right now. I studied history eventually. And then he talks a bit about memory as well, which was really cool. And then he goes over like different forms of therapy to recover. So it's not just like, hey, here's how your body and mind get fucked up from trauma. It's like, here's how you can recover, here are paths to recovery, but on a more like scientific, technical level. Trauma is not just all in your mind. Here's how it actually really impacts your brain and your body. If you love psychology or have experienced trauma and want to learn more about it, I would give this book a 5 out of 5. If you're not into like super science-y things, you find psychology boring, maybe a 3 out of 5. But I really loved this book. This was a really interesting book, really fascinating, and I learned a lot, and yeah, this is a cool book. All right, we are to our final book. Yay. So I, like most people, watched The Social Dilemma recently and got really freaked out by it. And so I watched that and I was like, okay, I need to do something because, you know, the way I use social media, the way I use my phone, I spend way too much time on there. I don't like that I spend so much time on my phone. I need to do something to change that. So after watching The Social Dilemma, I bought this book. And a quick disclaimer, as you can see, I haven't finished it because the first half of this book is basically everything wrong with your phone. And if you watch The Social Dilemma, there's nothing super new in here. It's a lot of the same stuff being covered, but the difference is The Social Dilemma, in my opinion, the thesis of it is here's how technology and social media are shaping the country, and here are statistics for groups of people. And this book is more about how it impacts you in your personal life and your day-to-day functioning. Like, how much of a role does your phone play? This author is approachable in a millennial way, but not in like a cheesy, like trying too hard way. It's just a very realistic and friendly. This feels like you're having a conversation with a friend almost. And so the first half, as the author Catherine Price describes it, is kind of like her sitting down as your friend and listing all of the horrible things about your significant other, and with the goal that you read the first section and you think, I need to break up with them. And then the second half of the book, which I'm working through right now, is all about how to break up with your phone. And I love this plan because it's so approachable. It starts out slow. Like the first day is download a tracking app to see how much you're using your phone. And then it kind of builds. And then it's like day 5, delete social media apps. I'm on day 9 right now, which is reorganizing your phone home screen. So yeah, I think that this book is really great. I think everyone should read it. And the thing I love about this book the most is that Catherine Price isn't saying, get rid of your phone. That's unrealistic. I think that as a society, we are so conditioned and so used to our phones. It seems pretty unrealistic that you could just give it up. I know, for example, when I worked at Chipotle, we used Facebook to have like a work group, and people would ask to get shifts covered there, and the schedule was posted there weekly, and announcements and updates came through there. So at that time, it was necessary for me to have Facebook on my phone, but now that I don't work there anymore, I've deleted the app from my phone, and I'm, you know, a couple days away from deleting my account probably because I hate Facebook. This book is just really fantastic, really helpful, and I think that everyone should read it because most people have an unhealthy relationship with their phone. Sorry, I don't know if I finished my thought earlier, but basically this book, it's not saying get rid of your phone entirely. It's saying here's how you can have a healthier relationship with your phone by unexamining and kind of unpacking the unhealthy behaviors and then replacing them with healthier behaviors. So yeah, 5 out of 5. I really enjoy this book and I think that everyone should read it. All right, so there we have it, my final stack of books. I don't know, I think I have a good mix in here, and I hope that you found at least one of these recommendations helpful. I know that not all of these are for everyone, but I hope that at least one of them piqued your interest, and I hope you seek out at least one of these books. If you do, remember not to buy from Amazon. Shop from your local bookstore. So yeah, that's all for today. I really enjoyed making this. If you would like a part 2 in the future once I read some more books, or if you want to hear my fiction favorites, I don't know, let me know down in the comments. I love books, I love reading. I feel like there's so much wisdom that is literally just right there, and all you have to do is devote a little bit of time to it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope, again, that at least one of these books piqued your interest. If you did like this video, please give me a big thumbs up, comment down below, subscribe to all of those things, and I will see you in another video soon. Bye!